these guys on all these are the choose, is these two guys.
So once you get them out of the way, then I'll do it for the day.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Energy and Environment Committee. Today is Tuesday, June 5th. We're going to go ahead and start with a general public comment and then anyone who filled out a card for a particular item. We can start with Jacqueline Richardson. Are you here? Ms. Richardson? Ms. Richardson is not in the room. Evan Gillespie, are you here? So did you fill out for a particular item or is it general? Okay, go ahead and sit down. And Herman is next, and then after Herman is Wayne Spindler. Go ahead, sir. You have 1 minute. General public comment. Go ahead.
My name is Evan Gillespie. I work with the Sierra Club, and I'm here on behalf of the Los Angeles Clean Energy Coalition. We're a coalition that includes Environment California, Pacoima Beautiful, Communities for a Better Environment, Global Green, Earth Justice, Los Angeles Business Council, a number of organizations. We wanted to just flag for you all, I know there's been communication between the Department of Water and Power and the City Council about a pending decision on how it's going to finally replace the Intermountain Power Project. And we wanted to take this moment to express our deep concern with the plans to spend upwards of $1 billion on new fossil fuel infrastructure. The Council, and this committee in particular, has been very clear over a number of years that it expected a transparent process, that there would be regular updates, and that the process would result in a clean energy hub in Utah. And we understand that there's been gas as a part of that strategy for a long time, but the process has not played out as the Department of Water and Power committed to. And we're asking this committee and the Council to bring some much needed sunlight and transparency and to take a harder look at what they're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Wayne Spindler and Herman, come up to the table, both of you. Both of you filled out cards for all items, including general public comments. You have 2 minutes.
Yes. For the record, the disbarred Armenians walking out, so you're
That's
breaking
not
the quorum.
On the item, you need to
Stupid
stick to the
asshole.
item.
So, let's see, we go first?
Yeah, you go.
Okay, so we have these interesting items, and the disbarred poker Korean does not like number 1, because he doesn't have a fucking law license. Response to the motion for a Martinez. Well, nobody can answer it because the asshole does not have a bar card and he's broken the quorum, so no one, number 1, unfortunately, we're sorry. As it is, we're so fucking late already. Look at the time. 2, relative to instruction of the DWP, environmental justice. What a pack of bullshit. We don't have environmental justice. We have nothing but shit. And then when you use water, you turn it into shit. And then it turns into a deadly smell. It smells like Tamar Krikorian's cunt. And it goes down the drain, around and around and around like the beach. And then you have kids in the house that take drugs, like H.R. Krikorian taking drugs for his disability. And then they go down into the sewer and into the fucking ocean. So the son of a bitch wants to support it, but he's not sitting in his seat, he's not in the quorum, he's misbehaving again, and it's up to Nuri to be his mommy, because when we have a problem with children, we go, mommy, and we're going to say, mommy, tell the poker Korean to sit the fuck in his chair and act like an adult, not a little child that doesn't have a bar card because he can't fucking comply with state law. And that's why we're tired of the sanitation Turk system on number 9. And of course, sanitation Turks are something that this evil Prokrikorian supports against, because he's against anything that sounds like a Turk. Turks, it's the same shit with this stupid son of a bitch. Yes.
You're done. Thank you very much, Mr. Herman. You have 2 minutes to discuss your items and general public comment.
Yes, Mommy. Thank you, Mommy.
So you heard Herman Jason Wessons on the Bureau of Sanitation. We're dealing with Wessons shit. All the shit due to what? The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, who scumbags overcharge the public, creating more problems in our neighborhood. Then I go into item number 2, dealing with Huzar, the fat, bald hussar's relative instructing the BOS, whatever the fuck BOS stands for, but I'll tell you what BITCH means, Weezar, you, to report on how their infrastructure in which the city has negatively declared no operation. That's really fucked up. Now, with my general public comment, you see, why is it that Paul Krikorian has to walk away and break the quorum here? Is it because he has no fashion sense? Absolutely. The problem is Paul Krikorian is not eligible under 115953, which is his bar license, because the stupid motherfucker Armenian doesn't know how to practice law. Can't do his fucking homework. So H-Rag and Tamari have to go into the sanitation pipes and clean all the shit that he fucked up at home, bringing I and Spindler to talk about his bar license, which is number 115953, ineligible to practice law. So like I said in the past, fuck you, Paul Krikorian, under 42 U.S.C. 1983. And the next time I'm in Van Nuys and I'm going to have a fashion statement, I'm going to tell my mommy Nuri to wear her big black bag around her waist so I can get the fuck on to Halloween.
Thank you, Mr. Herman.
You're welcome.
Have a good day. Can we move on to the, I need the speakers who are actually filled out cards to speak on the items. Lauren? Akiem, are you here? Hey, Lauren. And Lisa Moe? Hannah Sand? Are you here? Can you come up to the microphone? I can call another person. Jill Suriel, are you here? Okay, you want to come up? Thank you, ladies.
Madam Chair?
So, yes, Mr.
Just for the record, Mr. Herman and Mr. Spindler are continuing
Like
to
always,
disrupt
continuing
this
to
meeting.
disrupt our meeting. This is your
Talking-
last and final warning.
Talking in the
You two
audience
individuals, I will have you
continually ever
escorted
since
out.
they were done.
All right, thank you very much. Can you ask them to find their way out of our meeting? Thank you for disrupting our meeting once again. Get out. You're done, Mr. Spindler. Hold on for just a second, ladies. We have to wait for the grown men to be escorted out. Mr. Herman, you can join him.
What the fuck did I do now?
Goodbye. You're flipping off Mr. Koretz a moment ago. Thank you very much, Mr. Herman. You're one to talk. Leave my committee.
I'm fucking leaving.
Adios. We'll see you tomorrow, I'm sure.
Get a bar license under
Thank you.
953 and update it, asshole.
That's what the First Amendment rights look like. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Now we can proceed our meeting. Isn't it much better? All of a sudden, it got better. Do you want to start, Lauren? Go ahead. You have 1 minute. What you filled out cards for items number?
Item 1.
1. Okay. So all of you are speaking on item 1. You have 1 minute each. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Lauren Akiem, and I'm here on behalf of the LA Alliance for a New Economy and as part of the Our Water LA Coalition regarding the county's Safe Clean Water program. We'd like to thank the City of LA for their progressive leadership on this, among many other issues, and to reiterate the ways that the City of LA can really demonstrate that leadership on some key issues for a strong county safe clean water program. For instance, on a commitment to dedicating municipal funds to disadvantaged communities the way that the county regional program dedicates funds to disadvantaged communities, to support a strong compliance for all funds for a project labor agreement and local and targeted hire policies, and to have the maintenance for these projects done by the committed civil servants of the City of LA in the case of projects here, or to have the county be able to assume the maintenance with those wise public servants for the projects in other areas. And we feel like these are ways that City of LA's commitment to leadership can really help set the tone and lead a strong program. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Chair Martinez and members of the Los Angeles City Council. My name is Annalisa Mo. I'm the water quality scientist with Heal the Bay. And with a short time, I'd just like to talk at the big picture about the fact that stormwater is currently a nuisance, and more than that, it's a hazard in a lot of areas, and it could be an incredible resource for us. But we need to focus on a lot of different areas, including water quality, water supply, and community investments that might come along if we use nature-based solutions. One example of where nature-based solutions can be an effective program is Elmer Avenue in San Fernando Valley. It's a walkway for children going to school, and that area regularly floods when it rains. But with residential retrofits and a green walkway, that flood risk has been mitigated quite a bit. And in addition to that, you get additional native plants, you get more greenery, increases biodiversity, and increases community investment, and not just the flood mitigation, but you get all of that wrapped in one by using those nature-based solutions. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hannah Sands. I'm here on behalf of LA Waterkeeper. We want to applaud the city for being a leader in stormwater projects and hope the city will continue to be an example. We urge the city to commit to investing municipal funds into disadvantaged communities to ensure that projects are equitably distributed and low-income communities are invested in. Similarly, we want to urge that nature-based projects and community investments should be prioritized in these disadvantaged communities, so we spend the funding in the most effective way to get not only more green space, better air quality, mitigated flood risk, and many other multi-benefits associated with investing in nature-based solutions in these disadvantaged low-income communities. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Jill Soriel. I'm the Urban Conservation Director with the Nature Conservancy. I'm very happy to be here on behalf of our Water LA Coalition, who are all of our colleagues today, to talk about the draft principles that we'd like to see in the Safe Clean Water Program. As you know, the costs for stormwater compliance are upwards of $20 billion, so we have an unprecedented opportunity to actually change the landscape of LA County if we invest those dollars properly. So we're encouraging nature-based solutions as a way to get to compliance and also generate all of the other community benefits from equity to green infrastructure and access to recreation and open space. I think the city has done a tremendous job through Prop O. We learned a lot of lessons about how to do those projects, and so we're encouraging kind of sustained community engagement, technical assistance, and solutions that can get us to a holistic paradigm shift in LA County. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. The next speaker is Rosemary Jenkins. Are you here? Is that all we have? So, Rosemary, hi. You're our last speaker, and you've also filled out a card for item number 1. Go ahead.
Hello, Rosemary Jenkins. I'm with Lane and Our Water Coalition. Not all that long ago, I was on the committee that worked with Supervisor Zev Yaroslavsky, and we were able to completely redesign El Carrizo Park. And we were able to save a lot of the olive trees. There were over 100 in question, and installed water permeable materials, and with walking trails, etc. We would like to see our broader community, and especially in areas that are underserved, low income, be able to have such places that can also utilize catch basins and spreading grounds, and be able to, despite what Governor Brown has said that the drought is over and we don't have to save as much, we have to educate our populace to continue to conserve and teach them how to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, that concludes our public comment section of our meeting, including general public comments, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. If I can, item 6 is going to be continued, so there won't be any discussion on that. Can we please, does anybody have an objection to continuing that item? Seeing none, that item will be continued. I want to move that we approve items number 7 and 9 on consent. Are there any objections? Seeing none, that will be the order. Let's go ahead and take up item number 8 for action. Is there anybody here from the department?
Madam Chair, would you like me to read it into the record? And
sure, go ahead.
Okay. Item number 8, relates to a presentation update in regard to the Argo Drain Sub-Basin Facility Project. Should have an update from the Bureau of Sanitation and LAWA.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Shram Karagani, Los Angeles Sanitation. Based upon your prior meeting recommendation, we met, the entire city team, we met with LAWA and FAA, and I'm pleased to inform you that they have agreed to pay for 50% of the increased construction costs, and we are now updating the documents to bring it back to your committee, hopefully by June 20th.
Wonderful. Did you want to add something?
I was just going to say that it's going to our board on Thursday.
It's going to the board on Thursday?
Going to our Board of Commissioners on Thursday next week.
Okay.
And on 14th. And we are going to, we got the letter from FAA last week authorizing us to proceed with this.
Okay. Members, do you have any questions on item number 8? Okay, seeing none, I just want to direct sanitation and allow it to transmit the necessary reports and recommendations for consideration as soon as possible. Okay? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and take up items number 1 through 6 together since they're all related to the stormwater and watershed management. So why don't you go ahead and read items 1 through 6 into the record.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Item number 1 relates to Bureau of Sanitation report in response to motion Martinez, Wesson, Rodriguez, Harris-Dawson, Price, relative to the impacts of the Safe Clean Water Program and related matters. Number 2, Bureau of Sanitation report in response to motion Martinez, Huizar, relative to how their infrastructure and operations incorporate environmental justice principles and related matters. Number 3, Bureau of Sanitation report relative to maintenance, operation, and performance monitoring of the green stormwater infrastructure projects. Number 4, Bureau of Sanitation report relative to options for implementing the 5 enhanced watershed management programs. Number 5, adopted budget recommendation relative to instructing the Bureau of Sanitation report on the status of addressing TMDL requirements.
Yeah, let me stop you there. I made a mistake. It's 1 through 5, 6 we continued.
Okay.
So we're good. So why don't you go ahead and provide us with an overview of the Safe Clean and Water Program proposal, and then if you can help put items number 2, 3, and, well, not 6 anymore because we're going to continue it, put it all into context for this committee.
Sure. Good afternoon, Adel Hashkali, Assistant General Manager for Sanitation. With me I have Mr. Shram Karagani, the Watershed Program Director, Marty Adams from Water and Power, Chief Operating Officer, and Mark Bristol, Director of Public Works from LA County. It gives me pleasure to be before you today as we've talked for many, many years. Our greatest challenge is managing stormwater in the city. Every time it rains, our communities, many of our communities, especially disadvantaged communities, flood. We have over 500 locations across the city that have chronic flooding problems. At the same time, every time it rains, half an inch of rain can create up to 3.5 billion gallons of water that wasted down our waterways into the ocean. At the same time, we have our water quality permits, our waterways and ocean and rivers and channels have compliance requirements referred to as total daily maximum loads, TMDLs, along with the stormwater permit. All these things come together and are a huge challenge for the city. However, this is a huge opportunity also to really address the needs of the city, re-transform the city, revitalize the city, and improve the quality of life of our neighborhoods, especially the communities that are most disadvantaged, that have suffered most of the impact over the years, enhance water supply by groundwater recharge, address flooding in our communities to make the communities safe, reduce our liability, and most importantly also comply with our permits and provide the city with the path forward to compliance. I want to bring one thing that's important to put it in the context of what's the cost of no compliance? I know it's a question that's always raised. If you assume 10% of the days that we have in a year that we fail to comply with our 22 TMDLs, that can cost up to $1.5 billion a year in fees, penalties, etc. So really the cost of no action is very costly. But I think the way we do it is to invest, and that investment, especially in our disadvantaged communities across the city, will not only provide our water supply, will not only provide cleaner water, but also will green our community, make our communities a better place to live. What we have here before you is a a brief overview presentation. You should have a copy with you. Shahram will walk you through our mandates quickly, an update on TMDLs, and also what we're doing when addressing and prioritizing our capital investment. Then we'll walk through and talk about the safe, clean water program that's being proposed by LA County, and we played a big role, us and Water and Power, in being a stakeholder, and we provide a lot of input. We'll give you an overview, especially addressing some of the key elements that are important to the city and your committee, Madam Chair, and especially when it comes to equity. And that will be provided. And then I think what we'll do is turn it over to the county to provide their feedback and input. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shahram to start the presentation.
Thank you very much, Adel. Council members, so this is a brief presentation we have prepared. The first few slides talk about the city program, and our opportunities and challenges, and then the last slide talks about our collaboration with the county. And this is responsive to your motion, item number 1 and item number 3. The motion numbers are there. So briefly, the LA Sanitation, your program, stormwater program in the city, covers these elements. As Adele mentioned, that there are a number of TMDLs that we have. These are the stormwater mandates that we have to comply with. We are using green infrastructure as means of, implementing and also as means of complying with these mandates. Not going through all of them, but, these are some of the things we do scientific studies on behalf of the city, and we do enforcement, homeless encampment throughout the city, and public outreach. The current program revenue right now, the right-hand side, again, not reading the numbers, $44 million per year. And of course, because of the voters of the city, we got a $500 million general obligation bond back in 2004. So the compliance status right now, you have asked a number of motion that where we are with our TMDLs. This is a partial response to that. We have put all the watersheds that the city of Los Angeles is discharging in, as you see, Upper Los Angeles River, Bonner Creek, Dominguez Channel, and Marina del Rey. And we have used the TMDLs that we have been issued by Water Board underneath each watershed. Green says that we have done a great job and we are in full compliance. Red means that we have done a good job, but there are more time left for us to do even better job by doing more. And that's the red and green dots stand for. There are 21 of these TMDLs, as you see on the board.
So the red signifies that we still have work to do.
Work to do because they have given us a schedule to comply. As of right now, we are in good shape, but we need more projects in order to comply with the final loads. So the city of Los Angeles right now, you have heard back in 2015, we came before your committee and city council. We had what we call Enhanced Watershed Management Program, EWIMPs. And those EWIMPs are in those 5 watersheds that you see the city has. And approximately the cost of compliance over the next 20 years has been estimated to be $7.2 billion. It's a summary of the TMDLs that the city has to comply. Now, of course, there are lots of opportunities that, everyone within the city can get engaged, from the homeowner all the way to the government and everyone else. This water quality is not just, assigned to government, it's to everyone. From left to right, as you see, people at their own house level, they could become water quality manager and capture rain from the roof. We have rain barrel program that Water and Power, our sister agency, provides rebates to. If the opportunity is passed from the house, we go to the Green Street, which is the next opportunity in public right-of-way. We have a lot of streets in the city, and we could use that opportunity of, implementing green streets. If that opportunity is missed, then we get close to what we call end of the pipe. These are regional projects that you would see how the county of Los Angeles, if the proposal passes, is going to provide funding for us. Last but not least, the pie chart that you see below, because all of our green projects are always water quality, water supply, and flood mitigation. It shows that if we implement our EWIMs, how many acre-feet of water we are going to save the city. As you see, there's almost 90,000 acre-feet if we implement all of the EWIMs that the city has. Now, as far as the green infrastructure, again, with the help of, the support of the mayor and your city council, we have been able, with Proposition O and grants, to install some 67 green projects. Again, to emphasize that by green projects, I mean the projects that are addressing water quality, water supply augmentation, and flood mitigation, among other things, ecosystem, open space park, creation, so on and so forth. As you see the numbers right now, and we have spent so far $602 million. This is the $500 million of Prop O, of course, augmented by grants.
Under the 26 projects?
Under the 67 projects that we have, Madam Chair. Those are. Now, what we have done so far right now, the Enhanced Watershed Management Program, the one that I showed you in a couple of slides back, that was the $7.2 billion for 5 watershed. What we have done in order to implement it right now through a series of computer programming, we have identified what we call our Capital Improvement Program, CIP, for the next 5 years. The CIP is the method of implementation. That CIP for the next 5 years was for another 450 projects and $3.5 billion. And then we went ahead based on, again, listening to a series of motions that we had from the City Council. We prioritized them even further by using the disadvantaged community and all of the localized flooding that we have to bring down to the third level of implementation, which is a prioritized list of CIP projects that includes 150 projects. This is throughout the city, helping the disadvantaged community and also localized flooding for the next 5 years. So the map on the right-hand side shows the water quality, water supply, and flood mitigation. So the darker the color you see on the map, that means those are the more needed projects are needed, and then the lighter means, less. So there are regional projects that we have in our Enhanced Watershed Management Program, as you see, is all over the place. And a good example of that is the right-hand side. If you look at the right-hand side map, this is in Sun Valley area. We have a number of areas that we do not have as much storm drain systems. So those storm drain systems, as you see, those are the red line on the right-hand side. And those red lines, I don't have it.
Point to them. Yeah.
So those are the lines that you see, they all come and eventually they end up in the green projects that we have. So we are in a time that both the stormwater projects, flood mitigation, and green projects have merged together. They become one. They supplement each other as far as how nowadays we look at the project. So stormwater is not just a series of pipes anymore. We have the pipes, and then those pipes end up in a bigger project, such as Sun Valley or Rory M. Shaw projects that we have in CD6. Of course, we know this is the map on left-hand side. We have about approximately 400 projects on our list right now that every time it rains, we are going to have flooding right now. The map on the left-hand side, as you see, it shows all over the place, entire city, we have localized flooding. And the right-hand side, it shows the number of the projects and the cost of, constructing them right now, approximately another close to $1 billion. Now, the Safe Clean Water Program, a collaboration between County of Los Angeles and City of LA. Very briefly, I go over some of the highlights. It has 3 pillars. And those 3 pillars, as you see, I just read them from left to right. Of course, it is the enhanced water quality and compliance. That's number 1 on the left-hand side. The middle, resilience and local water supply. And last would be enhanced community investment. And of course, under each of those elements that you see, there are a number of programs, sub-programs that exist. For instance, for enhanced water quality and compliance, stormwater capture is important because that helps us not only to clean the water, to also augment our water supply. For water resiliency, we are using infiltration as the first method of implementing green projects. If for whatever reason it's not technically feasible, then of course we go to what we call capture and use, and last would be through conservation and series of rebates that we have. And last but not least, enhanced community investment. First and foremost, flood mitigation is important right now, so everyone has to feel safe, and of course addresses environmental justice and other ecosystem needs. So the Safe Clean Water Program, this is a timeline not to go through all of them, but the LA County Flood Control District, through Assembly Bill 1180, they received the power and the appropriate, enabling statutes in order for them to enact a special tax. And these are series of dates that you see on the slide right now. And the Board of Supervisors sometimes on June 26th are going to consider this item to see if should they put the special tax for November 6, 2018 for voters of, County of Los Angeles to vote on them. Now, again, the three structures of the Safe Clean Water Program. So it is a parcel tax. As you see, again, I would go from left to right. Is a parcel tax. You could see it is about, 2 cents per square feet. Some of the positive part of this is that low-income seniors are exempt, and there are a number of rebates and incentives that the program provides as of this moment that I'm talking to you. And then in the middle, it talks about the amount of, money that a parcel should pay. You could see a single-family parcel would pay approximately, of a typical size, would pay approximately $80 per year, and multiple dwellings, 118, and condos, 26. And the right-hand side is the revenue allocation. These are the allocations that have been identified in AB 1180. It mentions that, the County of Los Angeles would have 10% for administration and doing what we call district programs. And then 40% of the collected revenues in every watershed. By the way, every money that is collected in the watershed or sub-watershed would be spent in that watershed. So as a result of that, 40% of that collected money called municipal program would come back to the cities that have paid for that special tax. And last but not least, we have a regional program that it would take care of the other 50%. And at the 50% regional program, we would be competing for projects that we have, regional projects that the city has, and getting funding for that. Very briefly, to find out what is the as of right now, what is the approximate revenue that would come to the city. If the county collects about $300 million, the city's portion is about $100 million, and of course 10% for district share, $90 million between municipal and regional program would come to the city. This is just the nine areas of what we call watershed that we have in the Safe and Clean Water Program. And of course, I put down the population just to give you a flavor of the size of each of these 9 watersheds. So there are a number of rules that goes with the Safe and Clean Water Program. There are eligible expenditures. These are the part of the governance of the program. Eligible expenditure, of course, the money is for the stormwater program and compliance. So you could see design and construction, operation and maintenance, which is very important for the projects. The money only paid for capital expenditure, but this program, because it is a special tax, does provide also for operation maintenance, so on and so forth that you could see. And the right-hand side talks about, how the projects are going to be selected. There is actually standard project selection criteria. Briefly, as you see, water quality benefit 45 points, water supply 20 points, and disadvantaged communities, as you see right now, another 25 points, and leveraging funds and project readiness also have some points.
Just to add one thing is critical is under the municipal program, the money will come to the city in advance. So it's not reimbursement. So the money will be forwarded to the city at the beginning of every year. So that's an important thing. The second thing is projects that are funded and approved as regional projects will be funded annually in advance. So there's no reimbursement process by the city, which is going to help us tremendously moving things forward. And operation and maintenance of projects that are completed recently as part of the 2012 permit will be eligible for funding under these programs. They're not going to be excluded, which is a good thing for us to relieve the liability on a general fund that we have in the city.
Thank you, Adele. So the governance structure, as you could see right now, example of that for the Watershed Area Steering Committee, which is one of the names that is used in the governance structure. The municipalities have 6 seats, LA County Flood Control 1, so on and so forth. As you see, there are 16. The point of this chart was that, the city of LA for Upper Los Angeles River is well represented here as far as the membership in the steering committee. Go back one. By the way, anyone can apply for projects when it comes to regional projects. They have to compete, obviously, based on criteria, and they have to have a partner, a municipal partner with them. But anyone can have projects and come and compete. So the overall Safe and Clean Water Program, these are some of the positive things, that it has. It has, obviously, tax exemption for low-income, local and targeted workforce, green jobs for our community right now. maximum flexibility as we have negotiated with the County of Los Angeles, our sister agency, as far as, how to use our municipal return. And for the disadvantaged community, there are going to be 110% return funding for them. And this is a right-hand side example of that. What happens to $100? We are going to spend $44 of that in the DAC community, disadvantaged community. So there is number of, I mentioned that in previous slide, rebates and incentive that we are finalizing right now. But this is a summary of those rebates that would be provided. As of right now, it is 65, the maximum rebate that they could get. An entity is going to be 65% of total parcel tax. And recommendation, this is what also has been codified in our report that we have written to you, signed by our General Manager, Mr. Zaldivar. These are our recommendations that we have working and preparing and presenting support position for the Safe and Clean Water Program, working with LA County to finalize the governance structures right now and to make sure the needs of the city and obligation of the city is met, develop and present a city-based program delivery model, including governance, stakeholder processes, all of that what we are negotiating, and last but not least, working with our sister agencies, BOE, LA County Flood Control, to make sure the need of our flood mitigation within the city is also met.
And I want to just add to acknowledge the LA County Flood Control District, the partnership, the relationship, the openness and transparency to work with them hand in hand throughout the process. And I know the two supervisors' office, Supervisor Kuehl's office and Supervisor Solis's office have been involved heavily in the process. But I know acknowledge Mark and his team for working with us as part of this effort and working through the process. With that, I'll turn it over to Mark to give us.
Before you do that, can you talk a little bit about the list that you provided?
Yes. I did, Madam Chair, briefly. So what we did, there was a 3-stage of, I mentioned that the Enhanced Watershed Management Program, we went through computer programming. We created 5-year CIP, Capital Improvement Program.
They're all here.
Yes. And then we went ahead and created a subset of that for the disadvantaged community. So that's what you see, and the drainage problem.
So if the money comes in to us today, and where we're going to start spending the money, this is what our priority list looks like. With flexibility, we still have to vet it and work through it. But the good news about this is, since the TMDLs were developed on a schedule, the Santa Monica Bay was ahead of everybody just because of the priority of the TMDL. Ballina Creek was next, and the Upper LA River. However, the good news about this implementation, because funding is in the watershed is restricted to be in that watershed, the implementation will be done by each watershed at the same time. It's not going to be one area first in the city and move up to the next area. So it'll be across the city. So if you look at these projects, it's broken up by the watersheds, how we see compliance, how we see addressing the disadvantaged communities, and projects to really maximize and leverage our ability to get the maximum amount of funding from these funds. So you're going to see projects built across the city, not in one part of the city only. It'll be across the city to really help us comply by all of these requirements and help us invest the money that is needed and overdue.
So the way it's broken up, it's by region?
By watershed.
By watershed, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And it also is listed also by council office for the projects. And that's something we're going to be working through a stakeholder process with your offices, the community groups to further develop these projects. But these are the initial vetting through all these criteria to give us the biggest potential of funding and also to provide the biggest multi-benefits and biggest bang for the buck.
Okay, got it. Who's next?
Okay. Good afternoon, councilmen, councilwomen. Thank you for having me here today. It's been a pleasure working with you through the years, and I know I've been in front of City Council a couple different times. So the last time I testified in front of City Council, I was not the Director of Public Works, since that's the difference today. Today I'm here representing LA County Public Works and the County Board of Supervisors, and I'm delighted to walk you through a little bit of, today I intend to do very quickly a little bit of overview about the Flood Control District as an entity, what our current programs are and priorities are as a flood control district, and then also talk a little bit about the Safe Clean Water Program. The staff here, Adele and his staff have done a wonderful job already of laying out the benefits to the city of Los Angeles, but I will touch a little bit about our goals in bringing forward that program. As you may or may not remember, the district attempted a program similar to this in 2013, and it did not go forward. At that time, the County Board of Supervisors, as the board of the flood control district, decided not to put it on the ballot. But we did learn a lot of lessons during that attempt. And one thing we did learn was we weren't quite ready because we didn't have the programs ready. So the projects that we are putting in front of you today have essentially ripened. And that's the thing that you should keep in mind. We're ready because we have projects in mind and we know what it's going to take to comply across the region with our flood control, our water quality issues, and also our water supply issues. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the flood control district in an overview. Some of you may or may not know that the flood control district maintains 14 major dams in Los Angeles County. Those dams are both flood protection and water conservation facilities. Those conservation facilities also include spreading facilities. Those are located throughout the city of Los Angeles and the San Gabriel Valley, 27 of those. We operate and maintain over 500 miles of open channel. One of the most well-known channels that we maintain, along with the Army Corps of Engineers, is the LA River. We also maintain the San Gabriel River and many others within your communities, Pacoima, Tahunga. In conjunction with the dams and spreading grounds and channels that we maintain and that have been built through the years, the county flood control district captures about 400 billion gallons a year on an average annual year of water for water supply purposes and recharges that water back into the groundwater system. None of that water is actually owned by the County of Los Angeles or the Flood Control District. In the City of Los Angeles, all of that water is owned by the City of Los Angeles, which is what created a great partnership between your Los Angeles Water and Power and the County of Los Angeles Flood Control District. We currently are looking, and one of the priorities is to improve upon and optimize the system of water conservation for the City of Los Angeles. And I think you know it's painful to know that the city is only capturing about 15% of its water supply currently, and we know we can do much more. And one of the things, the benefits of the program we're putting forward is to continue to optimize the city's and the county's flood control system and water conservation system to improve the stormwater capture in Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, and the County of Los Angeles. The County of Los Angeles Flood Control District currently collects about $300 million a year, and the priorities of the district are to maintain and operate and rehabilitate the current flood control system. That is a 115-year-old system. Last time we had a benefit assessment collected in the county, across the county, was in the 1980s, pre-Prop 218. The fee that we collect for that benefit assessment has not changed since the 1980s, and it's currently about $28 per median residential median household at this time. So for about $28, you're getting a lot of water conservation, a tremendous flood protection system, in which we do not lose or have damaged properties very often in LA County due to flooding. And it does flood, as you know, in LA County, or has in the past at least tremendously. And then also the other part of that system and priority is to operate our own water quality system as a flood control district, and we're expending about $30 million a year, $40 million a year for the right to discharge waters to rivers, lakes, and streams in Los Angeles County. So it is important for the council to know that the flood control district also has its own separate MS4 permit that it has to comply with, and we have been acting as a regional body with respect to the development of the pollution requirements in Los Angeles County for a long time. The County of Los Angeles Unincorporated similarly has its own permit, and the obligation for the county unincorporated area is about, this year alone, is about $120 million to comply with its own MS4 permit. So when we say county, it's important for us to recognize we're talking about a special district called the Flood Control District today, and the Flood Control District is the one that intends to put forward this initiative. The Flood Control District has been partnering for some time with your city and your city managers. We have developed a number of projects. Since 2007, in fact, the district is, and the city have completed 6 major projects totaling $34 million, mostly water conservation and water quality projects. In the next 2 years, we plan to expend $20 million, separate from the program that we're talking about today, on 4 additional projects. And we are preparing to spend $127 million on the Rory Shaw Wetlands Park and Sun Valley upper storm drain system in the Sun Valley area. A tremendous investment that's ongoing. Some of those investments include the LA River Headwaters Project, the Sun Valley Park Drain, the North Valley Heart River Project, the Tahunga Wash Eco Restoration Phase 1, Tahunga Eco Restoration Phase 2, and Tuxford Green Project. All these projects were brought together by a collaboration and a partnership with your city managers, the Water and Power and Bureau of Sanitation, in attempt to comply, one, with the Clean Water Act, but also with the city's money. But the flood control money come to play was for flood control and water conservation purposes. So what the program going forward we intend to do is to start to integrate those monies and have a program that's integrated and provides all those multi-benefits that, and it allows us to actually leverage other dollars beyond flood control dollars to improve the quality of water in Los Angeles County, or in City of Los Angeles. The other thing that we are working on currently and have been doing for many, many years is looking at local drainage problems. And I've heard from a number of you and your counterparts in throughout the council districts about the flooding in Los Angeles County, the localized nuisance, what we call nuisance flooding, and what your residents call tremendous flooding in their neighborhood for some time. And it's important that we clarify the need, those local needs also. We call that interior drainage in Los Angeles County Flood Control District. Interior drainage includes flooding in streets, flooding on cul-de-sacs. It is not flooding that's related to the channel system itself. The channel system and the street system is designed by the district to actually move major waters through, flood waters through. When that system gets to its capacity, it does back up in streets at times, and like I said, become localized nuisance and problems for your residents. I've currently directed our staff to go out and begin, again, a program of drainage needs assessment. And I wanted you to know about that here today. This program is going to be rolled out in the first and second quarter of 2019, and the City of Los Angeles has been chosen as one of the pilot cities that we're going to roll this program out. What this program will consist of is an assessment of drainage needs throughout your city in coordination with, again, the Bureau of Sanitation and the Bureau of Engineering, to identify the highest priority nuisance flows, interior drainage issues for the City of Los Angeles, and to begin as a flood control district to build some of those, along with the city, to build some of those relief drains, if you will, that are so necessary to relieve your residents from the flooding that they encounter regularly. Going back, and one good example is this is the Sun Valley project. In the Sun Valley area, we used to have 22 days of schools missed annually, on an average annual year, due to flooding. That's been reduced to 0 with respect to flooding in the Sun Valley area, specifically around Sun Valley Park, due to the project investments that have been made in that area. We want to emulate that kind of project in coordination with a Safe Clean Water program to actually, again, to reduce the number of nuisance areas within the city. Okay. Now, water systems in the water in Los Angeles County in general has, water supply in general has some major challenges going on. And as a committee interested in the environment, I'm sure you're already aware that drought is a major player with respect to what drives us in Los Angeles County in our water, as well as pollution, a fractured government structure. Now, I think the city's blessed to not have that fractured governance structure when it comes to water, but throughout LA County, there's over 200 water agencies that actually have some say in how water is distributed, bought, moved, and actually produced in Los Angeles County, which creates a lack of prioritization for water supply investments throughout LA County. The other thing that's happening is our infrastructure, although was built, has doing a wonderful job as built, it can be improved upon and it can be optimized. And as I said earlier, I mean, I love the flood control districts, as I think everyone should. What was built is really protecting us with respect to those flooding and water conservation. But again, we think a new day in green infrastructure is due, a new way of flood protection and water conservation, where we're capturing as much as we can at the local level and infiltrating it is due, and we're ready to implement that if the region decides to support the Safe Clean Water program. $2.2 billion in loss was due to drought last year in 2014, and $2.7 billion again lost in 2015 in terms of economics. Drought also, as you know, after 5 years of drought, California faced powerful storms that made water year 2017 the second wettest year in 122 years. We've been, and even though we had that, it's that same old story. It's either we have too much or too little. Water's just like that. And so in LA County has not really come out of the drought, and I think you all are aware of that as well. Northern California may have felt that, but we certainly haven't felt it in Southern California. We are also experiencing extreme weather patterns. The Flood Control District studies weather and climate very closely. What we're seeing is that we expect due to climate change is to have the same amount of water in a shorter period of time. So less frequent storms, but more intense storms. And I think the La Tuna fire scenario is probably one to think about, and is a good example where we have a very intense heat, we have dry weather, we have the brush set up, we have a wildfire, and then we have a very intense localized storm event that actually can create tremendous mud flows. And it's a challenge for the flood control district and for the cities to keep up with that. We've had once in a millennium occurrences happening all over the United States and here in Los Angeles County with respect to rain. And on top of all those water supply issues, the annual demand in Los Angeles County, again, is 1.8 million acre feet or 652 billion gallons of water. And if you heard the number I said earlier, about 400 billion gallons caught, we're nowhere near the local supply that we would like to have with respect to that water demand. So the Board of Supervisors, LA County Board of Supervisors, has directed the Flood Control District to get out and to start to address these challenges, to begin to think more regionally, or to take our proper regional role in providing guidance and science and, frankly, dollars, incentives to get people, the community, our communities, the ones that we serve as under the district, to think more about this very, very precious resource of water and how best to manage it. And that's where the Safe Clean Water Program came from. Under the direction and leadership of Supervisors Kuehl and Solis, the department has been conducting over 2 years of outreach, along with your city officials and all the rest of LA County, to design the program that was described to you today. And I won't go into those details because you heard them, but I'll let him roll through these slides here real quick, and I'll touch on some highlighted things. It is a parcel tax. We intend to charge about 2.5 cents per square foot of impermeable area on properties, and we want to raise about $300 million as a down payment, if you will, on the needs that we described to you today, pollution and water supply. The local return and watershed is local and watershed-based funding is coming back to you, and as described, something in the order of 90% on the dollar is coming back to you in the form of $90 million if we raise $300 million. We are allowing for, under this program, 30% can be used for existing activities, and we know it's important from an operation and maintenance standpoint. And the governance really that has been set up really does favor the City of Los Angeles and its priorities with respect to water quality and water supply. Next slide. Some example projects that are already built and that are similar to what we think would be built throughout the City of Los Angeles is this Rain Garden and University Park, the South Los Angeles Wetlands Park, the Green Alley in San Fernando Valley, and Infiltration Gallery in Northeast LA. All projects that do some basic things, it's pretty interesting, is slow down the water and infiltrate it into the ground. And what's nice about this is it will improve the water supply of the groundwater basins in LA County and LA City, and it should be known that capture equals compliance under the current MS4 permit. And I try to, for elected officials, I try to simplify that down is we worked very, very hard with the state and regional board to qualify water supply as a benefit and as a compliance measure in LA County. Very unique to LA County as far as Clean Water Act compliance. The basic tenet of our current permit and obligation is to capture more water and conserve it. So each city has a specific delegated amount of volume of water it has to capture in order to be considered in compliance. And it's finally getting down to some simplified language we can use, and we're happy about that. And I think also an important thing to remember is the coordination between the city and the Flood Control District and the county in terms of leadership with respect to the Clean Water Act. There is no other entities in this region that have worked harder to actually improve the water quality within our rivers, lakes, and streams and the ocean. And yet there's still more to do. And there is no more other two entities that have been collaborating harder over the last 15 years to set up a reality with respect to what that could be, so that the regulations are realistic and actually appropriate. And we've also been able to turn the regulation to the most needy, to put the improvements in places where we know the pollution is greatest and where the water supply is most needed as well. So I'm proud to sit in front of you as the Chief Engineer of the Los Angeles County Flood Control District and recommend to the city support the measure that we are putting forward and support our County Board of Supervisors as we go forward and allow the residents in the City of Los Angeles to make a decision as to whether or not they want to have a program administered by the regional entity called the LA County Flood Control District that I believe will improve the quality of life with respect to water supply and water quality in LA City and LA County. Thank you.
Marty, did you want to speak?
Just real briefly, Marty Adams from Water and Power. We have always invested in stormwater capture along with Mark and the LA County, our spreading grounds and the ones that they operate for us from the county. But we do just scratch the surface of the water that's available. And so, one of the things that's missing in projects, we've partnered together. Adele and I partner a lot on projects such as Elmer Avenue and other Green Street projects. But the missing link in the funding has always been how we comply with MS4 permit, the discharge permits. And it's been something that's suffering in all of LA County for how to fund this real compliance obligation. And so with this proposed tax, we actually have an opportunity to meet an obligation. As Adele put it, we're going to pay the price no matter what, whether we pay it in fines and fees and get nothing out of it, or whether we pay it on purpose and partner that money with other money, such as money that we have in our stormwater capture plans at Water and Power, and actually leverage it into really good, positive projects that build local water supply, do clean up pollution from runoff, and also control flooding. We have an opportunity to leverage all those dollars and really maximize it and get us to our local water supply goals for the city of Los Angeles. So I think that this is a rare chance to take all the things that we need to do and wrap them together in one measure and then administrate them through the county so that we can have something positive happen. And besides just the city of LA, a lot of entities around us, other cities, impact our watersheds, and we share watersheds together. And so it's a chance to get all those players working together as opposed to just one or two city agencies working either independently or alone. So this is it's a real opportunity, and I hope that we're able to get all the voters to take advantage of it.
Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. I do have a few areas of discussion that I'd like to elaborate as we move along all these items. But before I do that, I'd like to ask my colleagues if they have any questions. Mr. Koretz?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few. First of all, as I understand it, the county flood control will administer the funds for this project. And as encouraging as your presentation was, there are some that view the county flood control as not necessarily the most environmentally sensitive entity. So how confident can we be about prioritizing green infrastructure so that we don't just clean the water, but we help protect and support native habitat and birds and insects and animals and healthy soil and other things that we should be doing at the same time to get the most bang for our buck?
So
the representation on the committees, maybe.
Yeah, well, Councilman Koretz, first, the county flood control district is committed to a watershed approach to its planning and its operations these days, and there's many projects on the ground now over the many years, although it's very easy to see in the early 30s and 40s, we built a system that is gray, and it moves water very quickly to the ocean, and that was driven by the economics of the time. But these days, there are many projects along the LA River and throughout the city that show really the commitment of the district to a green approach to this. And we keep referring to Sun Valley Project as a shining example of that. The other thing that we've done under the guidance of our supervisors on this specific measure is we brought in a stakeholder advisory committee that is representative of many, many interests, but specifically environmental interests had been fully engaged in the development and approval of the program that we've developed for the board's consideration. So we're proud to have those partners. You'll see them supporting us. Those names will be out and about saying, they support the approach that we're taking, and I'm proud that we engaged them the way we did in the development of the program.
And how do we measure the pollution reduction in our water quality projects? Because I think we'll need to know exactly what benefits we're receiving.
Yes, advocacy is so important in what we do, and the commitment, we've been looking for some time about how to measure that, and what the surrogate is, as I said earlier, is a capture of stormwater itself, which we know does contain pollutants of concern. And so what we're attempting to do is capture them before they reach rivers, lakes, and streams, with the implied benefit that those pollutants that would have been carried there are now captured in a system. We will clean it, either the Mother Earth through infiltration or through innovation and technology, and there's lots of those that are out there, to take the pollutants of concern off specific to the water bodies that we're concerned with. We have with monitoring ongoing with the regional board that is showing how we're doing in that arena, and that we're being held to that monitoring as approach. So project-based structural development of BMPs being put in place, and then the measurement through a review of permitting and through our monitoring is ongoing with the state of California. And we are hopeful that we are going to make a dent in slowing down the pollutants that reach our rivers, lakes, and streams with this the system that we're proposing.
And we think that'll be good enough to help us meet our TMDL requirements.
I know it will be because your permit requirements are pretty specific. Build it and you're in compliance.
We feel comfortable, Councilman, is on the implementation side. The city will have the role in the municipal. We have control over that. And also for the regional, we will be the lead on the 4 watersheds that we are part of. So we'll have a lot of that leadership that you have put in place, the committee and the chair and every council member and the mayor, as to how to ensure we provide multi-benefits. And in the scoring of projects, that whole thing about water quality benefits, water supply, community benefits, all these elements are scored highly, and there is a process for doing it. So we're very comfortable and confident that what we have here will provide us the sustainable needs that we need to do and compliance pathway. And we have an extensive coordinated monitoring plan that we invest. The state, I think, invests $4 million a year, $4.5 million, in doing extensive monitoring across our watersheds to establish baselines and to measure compliance. So the compliance is based on 2 things: stormwater capture, as we have in the permit. The second thing is water quality before and after. So we're doing both. We're monitoring, and we're going to measure how much we put in the ground.
So doing all of these projects, do we have a sense of how much of the almost $8 billion that we're on the hook for in permit fees, how much of that do we eliminate?
What we saw here, as I think Shahram showed you in the presentation, the $8 billion was the initial estimate that we have, and we start prioritizing it. This is a long 25 to 30-year program, continues to be invested. We're going to leverage money, we're going to bond money, and we will start implementing in the first 5 years. We're looking at $1 billion+ to invest over 150 projects across the city. We're going to monitor, adjust, adapt, operation and maintenance, and providing communities a chance to take care of, have ownership of the projects through some kind of collaborative agreements with the community to take care of the green infrastructure across their neighborhoods is critical, which we are looking at. Community investments is important. So we're very comfortable that the initial 8.7 is what we have, but I think right now we have the pathway for compliance, we have the funding, and we're going to develop the prioritization to give us the pathway to get it done. And the regional board has been working very closely with us, and I think this will be having the money in place and having a plan and real implementations will give them the comfort that we're moving forward on pathway to compliance, but also improving the quality of life in neighborhoods. That's essential.
So we're pretty confident that no one comes after us and says, all right, today you owe us $8 billion because you haven't moved fast enough.
I think with this measure and what we have done to date and the plans that we have, I'm sure that we will be in good shape. We have a huge support from our environmental partners in the city and the county. We have a great relationship with the community, but we need to establish a source of funding, not only to show that we're investing and taking care of our community, especially the most disadvantaged, but also to remove the liability and the exposure to our general fund, which is something that I know is critical for all of us. I believe strongly that by having this program, I think we'll be on the right path to really addressing compliance, but also making our communities a better place to live.
And just keep in mind also on a yearly basis, we do provide a report that what we have done, what projects we have implemented, plus the monitoring of the entire water body. So those 2 documents each year on a yearly basis go to the water board, so they see how we are improving and how we are complying and getting closer to the targets.
Have we heard whether there's any chance that the Trump administration messes with the Clean Water Act? And if so, do we have any idea what that would change in terms of our obligations and our funding and anything else like that?
I am not an attorney, but Councilmember, the way I see it, because of our regulation has gone through rulemaking, it's a very long process. to undo the rulemaking, it takes many, many years because there is a lot of scientific studies you have to do in order to pass one of those rulemaking laws that US EPA has in place.
So we don't expect anything to happen in
That's
the
just
short-
my personal opinion, sir.
And one more question, this one for the DWP. How do you feel about the makeup of your 100% renewables group in terms of environmental justice communities representation here in the city?
Regarding the power renewables?
Pardon?
Regarding the power studies?
Yes.
We actually have a number of environmental groups that have selected their representatives for that study. So we actually did a survey and feel that there's a pretty diverse group that's represented, but the representatives from each group are chosen by the group themselves. We haven't intervened in that, but we do believe we have a pretty broad representation, and they've been very engaged, and we feel very positive about the results we're going to get.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Kokorian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, the parcel tax revenues are based on impervious square footage. Just 30,000 foot question. Has there ever been a parcel tax that's based on a description of the actual parcel like that? And do we know that that's defensible to do?
Yeah, so the nexus to lot area and runoff is common through the United States, and our current benefit assessments are there. This sort of ups the ante because of the innovation and technology that's come about. The county is invested in geospatial data as well as LIDAR to actually analyze those areas that are impervious versus permeable on every single lot, 2.1 million parcels in the county of Los Angeles, and can define like sort of a binary look at it. Red is the area that's impervious, white is permeable, and so we're charging that way, and we feel very confident about the ability to defend that approach and the nexus to the benefits that are being provided by the
nexus part I get. It's the definition of the property that seems a little bit novel to me, I guess.
It is novel. It is novel.
Is there any sort of appeal process if somebody has a large, say, equestrian property that, your system determines to be impervious and it's not?
Yes, in fact, there is an appeal process that a property owner can come in and appeal with respect to the analysis that we've done, and also a reanalysis over, we haven't studied the frequency of maybe on a 5-year period, go back and fly the county again to determine, okay, what areas have become less impervious or more impervious, to reassess the tax that's currently being collected.
Well, which brings up another point. Presumably that rate would change for a particular parcel year to year, depending upon what happens to that parcel. So
that's correct.
And the assessor has to make some determination there?
We do that now under the benefit assessment annually.
So, just again, looking at the 30,000 foot level, that would seem to me to create a greater tax burden for the people of the city of Los Angeles, in that there is likely a much larger percentage of impervious acreage within the city, number one. But number two, the city of Los Angeles has led the county in terms of our low impact development ordinance and many other things, so that while we have a greater impervious square footage, we're also doing a greater than average job of ensuring that we don't have runoff. So how does that work in terms of equity for the people of the city compared to the rest of the county?
Yeah, so we're working on an accrediting program currently to address good faith efforts have been made on individual properties. Hasn't been fully vetted yet, but we have a straw man on the table currently that would essentially provide for those who have done LID, for instance, on their property to be given a credit and a reduction in the amount of money they're being charged on an annual basis.
Yeah, that's an important, because in the city of LA, as you said, the councilman, is having a lot more impervious space just because we're an urban city.
We're built out.
The money stays in the watershed, by the way. So I just want to make sure we understand that money that's created in our watershed, in the upper LA River watershed, for example, will stay in the upper LA River watershed. It's not going to go to somebody else outside that watershed. So the money will be invested back into our area. So the city will get the money that's raised from the city back in the city, so we'll have to spend. But the critical thing that you brought up is, and Mark brought up, is the low impact development credit. For folks that have really done a good job in complying with capturing runoff on site, and has done a good job on ensuring that runoff is not coming off the property, we have been working closely with the county to ensure that that credit program, so the people are not double taxed. That if you have a property here and property here, and this property has done a good job in capturing runoff and putting it in the ground or putting it in the system for reuse, while the property next door has not done anything, they should not be taxed the same way. It should be a credit done.
I'm thinking more the city compared to the city next door, because we have a low-impact development ordinance, which is state-of-the-art, and it's been enacted now for a number of years, so I just want to make sure we're not prejudiced by our previous good work. Is that, and I assume that's going to be the case.
Yeah, we've heard a lot about this, specifically within our Stakeholder Advisory Committee.
Okay.
A lot of the other cities have passed, and all have ordinances LID, recognizing the city and the county, the first two to come out with LID, and it's been implemented throughout.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
If I could add, this is really important to us because there's not enough public space to catch the volume of the water that we need to catch. So we really need to incentivize people to do it on private property, whether it's a big lot store with a parking surface, or whether it's at a home. If we can keep water on private property, that's a lot less we have to deal with. To Councilmember Koretz's point about are we going to meet the obligations for the whole runoff of the permits? As we take big bites out of that amount of water, then the problem that we're left to deal with is much smaller. So it's very important for us that we have good incentives for people to hold on to water on their own property, because then it makes the job that we have to do in public space much easier.
Okay. So, and then, Adele, you kind of anticipated my next point, and that is on the watershed allocation. The sanitation report gave an example of the city producing $100 million of the $300 million in revenue, and then showing that 90% of that would come back to the city. But 50% of that is in the regional program pot, and the watersheds don't necessarily match up with the city. So how is it that, what assumption are you applying to base that on?
It's a good question. So each watershed had what's called enhanced watershed management plans. In the 4 watersheds we're involved in, we are the leads on those watersheds. We've led the development, led the monitoring, led everything in that effort. We established a great relationship with the cities. What we will be doing is there is a watershed steering committee overseeing expenditures in that watershed, and there is representation. And it's going to be representation by the percentage of the area you have in the watershed. So the City of LA will have extensive weighted representation in these watersheds to determine what gets invested, what doesn't get invested in. So we have oversight over how the regional money is going to be spent in the 4 watersheds that we're involved in. We'll have that say, we'll have enough seats. We have also, we have 3 out of the 6 municipal seats. We'll also have the water purveyor seat, which is Water and Power will be having that seat. The sanitation seat will be provided for sanitation, and the recreation and park seat is provided for the City of LA. So we'll have enough representation, but I think the enhanced watershed management plan we developed is the footprint. We've had the partnership relationship with everyone, and I think we're confident that that will also really provide the biggest benefit for the city as we see it.
Okay. And then I'm sorry to belabor the details of the revenues here, but if the municipal program is a 100% local return, right? 100% of the revenues derived in the city come back to the city in that pot, right? Yeah. So the regional program has the disadvantaged communities component that provides 110% to come back based on the ratio of population within the watershed area. Yeah. Sure. Right? Am I understanding that correct?
That's correct.
So where is that premium money coming from if it's on a watershed basis? I'm not... So if 110% from the revenues are coming back to the watershed disadvantaged communities, based on population ratio and what's raised by the tax,
From the
Where's it coming from?
From the non-DAC and that watershed.
Within the same watershed?
Exactly.
Okay, so still 100% of the revenues derived stay within the watershed, no more, no less.
Exactly right.
Okay.
But it may direct the projects within the watershed.
It's directing to, yes, correct.
But that's, okay, but that's not what's, it's
It doesn't.
As you spend it within the.
But really, what we're trying to say is, if you have an area in the city that is disadvantaged, and the percentage of revenue coming from disadvantaged community, our commitment throughout is to put 10% more into that community than what they paid
from within that
the watershed pool.
Okay.
Exactly.
So if the watershed decides, if the watershed governance committee decides that they want to do a watershed-wide major project, something like, I don't know, taking all of the stormwater drainage in that watershed and filtering it for drinking water use. How would that apply? I mean, most of the projects that are on the list are more neighborhood-based, kind of regional, sub-regional-based projects. But is there the ability to devote some or all of that watershed money to major projects, building a new dam or, something like that?
Sure. I mean, basically you have that, which is going to benefit everyone. But really what we wanted to get out of it is that we need to invest at the local level and provide these regional projects that are addressing problems. So we don't want to just go ahead and just build one project and that's it, we're done. We want to invest locally, and it's a mix of the two. I know we're not going to have all the answers today, but you should be able to build large projects like we have in the Sun Valley. The Sun Valley project is a large project that is capturing the Rotary M. Shaw project, capturing runoff from 1,000 acres.
Yeah.
But at the same time, is serving disadvantaged community in that area.
But it's also serving many other communities,
including the
too.
downstream community that you
benefiting
exactly.
Studio City. Because
exactly. That's true.
And that's my point.
Yeah, it's. I think the detail. I think we still have to work out how we implement this. But the intent of this is that we put more in the disadvantaged community than what the disadvantaged community pays. And that's really an overarching commitment that is there. The details, I think, will still have to be worked out on how we deal with it on a project, how we track it. I agree with you. We'll have to still continue working through it.
The water supply would benefit everybody.
That's the thing. So I totally see the objective, and I agree with the objective. It's just that in the application, it gets complicated because the benefit expands well beyond the community that the project is built in. And so,
and I think you could look at it the same way that if we didn't do anything and we had to pay a lot of money in fines or fees, it'd be paid by everyone across the city out of whatever money the city collects. So in that sense, there is some roll-up, whether it's water supply or fees to the city, that everyone benefits from mutually. I think the idea is that the projects would be focused on in each watershed and evaluated based on their value, meeting these particular, the individual goals. But you're right, there are some benefits and some liabilities in the absence of this that are shared evenly by everybody.
And the converse could be true too. You might build a project in a community that is a disadvantaged community, but it gives no benefit to that community. The benefit is all downstream.
Right.
So,
which is one reason that we do like the fact that there's also neighborhood benefits, green space and open space and other amenities, because as you know, a lot of folks live around infrastructure that supports the whole city, whether it's a landfill or whether it's a water filtration plant or a city service yard. A lot of folks have to live by infrastructure that benefits the city as a whole.
And sometimes that's not such a benefit
so
for that
hopefully
community.
A lot of these
That's my
projects
point.
deliver something good on the surface that then, helps justify the need of all what's underground, what's going on.
Okay, well, I don't expect an answer. I just wanted to highlight the issue, and it's something that I think we're going to need to work on to further define how that's going to be applied.
You're done?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Krikorian. So Adele, item number 2 is a motion that I introduced asking sanitation to incorporate some of the environmental justice into your programs. Can you talk a little bit about how this program would benefit from that?
Sure. This is we have actually a discussion on equity, and we ensured through the program of the county equity was a critical component. We believe there's a lot of our communities that have been disadvantaged by lack of investment of infrastructure for many, many years, especially when it comes to storm drains and flooding. So to me, I think what we are seeing here is by looking for how the investment is directed into communities that have suffered for many years from the impacts of lack of investment. So putting it in disadvantaged communities, having local hires, having education and outreach in these communities, and partnering with little community-based organizations in these areas to operate and maintain. I think that's when we're going to start making an impact and hopefully undoing what has been done for many years, which is lack of investment and taking care of it. So I think to me, it's the message is clear. We've heard it. It's addressing equity and environmental justice is a key component in our program in LA Sanitation. In this program, in the Safe and Clean Water program, it's critical. I think the county have integrated a lot of these elements here as a critical, including the investment piece. But really, at the end of the day, is working with the community, understanding the needs, and investing to ensure that the most critical things are addressed, but also creating jobs in that local community, creating stormwater coordinators to work with the community. All these things are in place, and I think we have a great opportunity here to showcase how addressing and providing equity and incorporating environmental justice into a program can be very effective and successful.
So hi, Mark. Nice to see you.
Councilwoman.
So I want to ask you if you can provide a feedback on the state of the infrastructure in the East Valley in particular. And I just want to hear from you because I have mixed experiences to share. So I think on the one hand, DWP is a leader, especially in efforts like their stormwater capture master plan and improving our storage spreading grounds and the Pacoima Dam. But on the other hand, I grew up in Pacoima, so I can tell you that the Pacoima Wash is usually seen as a physical, has physically divided our community for years, and sometimes resulting in tragic deaths year after year after year. And to top it off, you also have the local flooding issue that continues to be an issue every time it rains. And I understand despite Rory Shaw, that continues to be an issue for this community. So I just want to hear from you on the state of the infrastructure in the East Valley.
Sure. I think, and specifically in East Valley and throughout portions of LA County, there are locations that have suffered through the years, acknowledging, for instance, in East Valley, we had KABC there every time it rained because that was a place, Tuxford, where we would see the van underwater and that. And a lot of it is being planned for and relieved through the system called the Sun Valley Project, which is an extensive 14 project system, not just Rory Shaw, but others. But there is more to do, Councilwoman. There is more to do with respect to the city and the county really collaborating on what are the priorities for the city with respect to that nuisance, and to take advantage of the program that I introduced earlier, specifically a needs assessment by the city. And I know the city knows those places and those locations.
Right.
A lot of times what happens, well, let's just talk about historically, first of all. Let's acknowledge, first of all, the east part of the city, northeast, was the last place to be plumbed, essentially, from a historical standpoint, and many of it was not plumbed, so to speak, drained. It was left to drain off and run off and eventually end up in the LA River. For instance, the last major project I'm aware of as the chief of the flood control district that we had on the books prior to really not doing much more new capital improvement was the Sun Valley Drain, which was a $72 million project that we kept balking at because there wasn't funding to do it, there wasn't the will to do it, and we definitely needed the cooperation of the city of Los Angeles to do the project. What has changed since that time is things like the drain system that Adele showed you that is proposed for that area, a reassessment of the area with respect to priorities for infrastructure, and we have SB1, and we have Measure M, and we have potentially this measure, and the existing benefit assessment, which needs to be all leveraged to bring about improved infrastructure throughout that portion and other portions of the city of Los Angeles. What I think the city needs to do, frankly, is to leverage the flood control district specifically for projects like that by prioritizing that area and turning to us and requesting that improvements be made in coordination with the city to improve, again, the drainage system within specifically Northeast, as well as the valley, as well as many areas, the low-lying areas of Los Angeles City, the San Pedros and along the beach areas where we have a lot of nuisance flows in those areas as well. So it is a different time. We are coming out of a time of recession. I've been telling my own staff that it's sort of like the late 30s and 40s, that we're like in this go-go period of infrastructure. What would be a shame is that the city and the county weren't thinking large about this and taking advantage and prioritizing it. So what I recommend, and I saw the staff report there, and I wholly agree with the recommendation regarding having the Bureau Sanitation engage with us and specifically focus on the needs within the city, specifically for the benefit of the existing funding that's going on, but also to leverage this Safe Clean Water program to improve. So I just think it's a bright day for it. I see a lot on the horizon, but there's still a lot to do. One other thing I want to mention, and it was mentioned earlier in the financing, and it does apply to this situation, is I think the city would benefit from the program with respect to a regional approach, and that the flood control district's bonding authority is tremendous. Our bond rating is tremendous, and we are seeking. We have paid off our last bond, and so we are offering bonding on the improvements, and what that would allow us to do is get a faster start on the capital improvements that you're hearing about today.
Well, see, I don't believe that. I think we've tried to do our best to deal with the infrastructure problem in the East Valley. In fact, I think historically it's just been so much easier to just completely ignore the Northeast San Fernando Valley and its public safety and environmental issues, because it's so much harder to own its responsibility and implement real solutions. So I think the progress that we have made in some of these communities are due not because people have tried to do the right thing, but I think it's because, unfortunately, tragic accidents or deaths have occurred, and because of the result of those tragedies, we have somehow sprung into action, but I don't believe it's come from a place of trying to do the right thing. So that's historically where I'm trying to come from. But I believe our communities deserve better, don't you?
I do, absolutely. That's why we made such a huge commitment to that area, and we should continue to do so.
So I'm glad you agree. So what else outside of this program can we be doing to help some of these neighborhoods?
I think following along with the master planning that's going on for the LA River, which is going to include the tributaries, and I'm sure you're aware of the 51-mile LA River master plan, and it includes, again, unlike the previous attempts, it includes tributaries like Pacoima. Again, engaging our agency with respect to the priorities of the city and having the city prioritize. I understand there's a capital improvement plan. Share that in plan with the county flood control district and prioritize those projects which you are choosing first to go. And with a representative like you, I'm sure you'll get prioritized. And
well, I mean, I know you're very talented at what you do. I think you take an amazing regional approach and its needs. Yeah. But I'd like to focus more on the neighborhoods. What does that partnership look like to you?
Yeah, it's a lot more stakeholder outreach. It's having community groups like the Sun Valley Watershed group, consistent of all the neighbors from that neighborhood prioritizing for us. We learned a lot about what we should build. And this is what's changed in terms of our approach, is actually being in touch and not building anything until we've actually met with the community. Getting community representation, and that was the approach on the Safe Clean Water program is, let's get community watershed managers and others from the community to tell us what the priority should be. That's the change in the approach for us. We call it the watershed approach to planning. And I think that whatever area in the city, including the area you represent, we need to have good representation from the ground level, from the residents, before we make any investments, so that we can prioritize what we're building and not just make up our minds for them what should be done. The day of building very large things is essentially over. The large infrastructure is done. We do need to reinvest in it and make sure it's maintained properly. But what we do to optimize that and what we do at the local level is really, this is the time to be thinking about that. So I just, you hear my optimism. I just think it's a very positive time for the city and the county to get together on very local level issues and do something about it. So, I mean, I'm excited, Councilman Martinez, to be working with you and for the district to be working with you and going forward and to engaging on these issues. You engaged last time on this measure. I appreciate that. And
in 2013?
2013. I remember that. And
I was on the school board back then, and that was a big deal.
Marty brought up the idea that open space, and now the schools are exempt from this piece taxes this time. We are going to be looking to partner with the schools to actually put water on their properties if possible, and that'll be our next thing. So I am optimistic, but at the same time, I want to recognize that you represent an area that is, in our terms, poorly drained, and it's something that we need to address and face the fact that that is the way things rolled out, and see what we are. And I think we have made a commitment on down payment, at least so far, but there is more that could be done in that area of the valley to properly drain and capture those flows and reuse them for the benefit of the community that lives there.
Yeah. Mr. Saldivar, I'm glad you joined us.
Thank you.
I want to go back to this issue of equity with you, because, providing additional resources to disadvantaged communities, I don't disagree with. I think it's a good step in the right direction, but it's kind of insulting that in an attempt to appease communities just simply because you want to keep them quiet. So I just want to make sure we deal with the equity issue, especially when it comes to disadvantaged communities. But I think I've conveyed this to you in the past. Voters in this community have always supported these smart initiatives. We've taxed ourselves over and over again, and we don't ever seem to actually get the physical projects. They go somewhere else. They go to a different part of the city. And I think that's something that we've struggled with, included in your department. DWP have emphasized this over and over again. So it's great that 110% of the returns would make sense. I think it does. But I want to make sure that it's strategic and that we're building in the areas that mostly need it, that have been left out, that have taxed themselves over and over again, and we never seem to reap the benefits of any of that.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Enrique Zaldivar, General Manager and Director of LA Sand. Mark, don't walk away.
As a supervisor waiting on Louisa.
Yeah.
I have to apologize. I was late for an appointment with the supervisor's office, so I'm going to excuse myself from the meeting if you don't mind. But I do have my colleagues and representatives from the supervisor's office who could sit in the chair if you'd like to speak.
Let me just say that we share in the passion that Mark expressed with regards to being able to be at the neighborhood level with regards to what it means for a community benefit. It's one thing what everybody else thinks is a benefit. It's important that it truly does reflect and result in it being a benefit as the community sees it. You have pounded on us since you became the chair of this committee.
Did you say pound?
No. Oh. you have inculcated on us. Sometimes it does feel like a pounding. No, you have inculcated on us this value of. What's that?
She's persuaded.
She's persuaded. This value of environmental justice, but just a very clear illustration of a community that has an unpaved alley. This is on stormwater. Mm-hmm. Who for years have wanted there to be some improvement to that alley. Wouldn't it be great that we find an opportunity to do a green alley that does benefit and bring an improvement to an alley to a community that had it unpaved for all these years? I think that is a way of being able to make up for some of the lost ground over the years. I mean, it's ground zero, and ground zero for a lot of these communities doesn't really mean ground zero. It means we're starting from a back of whatever hadn't been done over the years. So I think it's important that that kind of value be brought to bear in every one of the projects, but clearly the community level projects. Some of the greenway opportunities do have a direct benefit to the community itself, not a community somewhere else, but the community right where the project is located. So we got to do more of that in this stormwater program.
Well, I just want to emphasize that I think I need help in assessing our needs and developing a true action plan, an action plan that is truly about solving problems in the neighborhood. Kids not being able to walk to school because of the rain, or cars, stuck on the freeway because of heavy rains and floating. That was about a year ago. Remember that experience in Sun Valley? Or our neighborhoods being inundated with water. Those are real community problems that we need to solve. The compliance with the, MS4 permit, frankly, that is not a community problem. That's our problem to solve. So I just want to make sure that however we move forward, that we actually have an assessment and a true action plan on how we're going to solve actual community problems, not deal with another, checklist of a permit that we need to make sure that we're in compliance with.
And as your eyes and ears, as the local agency for the city, you can expect us to be looking out for that.
Adele, I know you skimmed over some of the general background on the credit program that businesses, if they have implemented stormwater capture or treatment elements into their properties. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I have a different experience in terms of how these businesses feel in terms of actual projects either way.
This one is actually in evolution. Actually, we just got a revised credit and rebate program outline yesterday. But really the way that we are seeing it is that if you have captured runoff on site, and basically the measure is there's a 85% storm, which is roughly 3/4 of an inch of rain. If you have the capacity to capture that, which is in compliance with the LID, if you can show you're doing that, there is a potential you can get a credit back on your tax that you're paying. And it's broken up by the quantity of water you're capturing, the system you have to treat the water and put it in the ground. And then if you're enhancing the community conditions around your property, let's say putting grassy swales, a better sidewalk, better conditions, trees, that helps with this management, you will get up to 65% of the tax credited back because you're managing runoff. The issue that we're dealing with right now is what's the threshold to allow you to get that credit? What's the size of your project, your development? Is it 50 acres? Is it 5 acres? Is it nothing? We're advocating to ensure that it should be open to everyone. Credit should be applied. If you're doing managing runoff on site, you should get a credit back. And I think 65% we think is adequate, just because there is a lot more work that needs to be done across the city to address other conditions that, whether the system is running or not, you still have to maintain it, you still have to take care of it. So I think that effort is developed, and I think it's in good condition, except I think having a threshold is a concern for us. We should not have a threshold to restrict that credit to only large developments. Should be applicable to everyone.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah.
My experience with this is that if we tried, businesses would do the right thing if they feel that improving the environment also helps their bottom line. So I think we can probably make that argument, especially for those who have undergone some of these projects on their properties and seen the return. I think we can enlist them as environmental champions if we do it right.
Sure.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I know Mark had to leave. Which supervisor did he have to meet with? Just kidding. Not ours. Then I can tell you how urgent it was. No, I'm kidding. So I think this was a much needed discussion, members. I know our meeting went a little lengthy, but I think we still need more information. And quite frankly, I think this is more of a conversation about whether property owners should consider taxing themselves. I know that, for example, Sun Valley, Pacoima, North Hollywood, including the city of San Fernando, these businesses have been paying flood control taxes for decades, but you wouldn't even be able to tell that because of the inadequate infrastructure that exists in the East Valley. So, the unsafe channels, and you know this because we've toured those areas every time it rains. So for that reason, I want to continue this conversation and come back in 2 weeks, and I want to give the following instructions. Did any of you guys have any additional questions?
I had
Go ahead.
one other question.
Sure.
It's kind of off the wall, but the objective of the Safe Clean Water program is based on stormwater and urban runoff capture. Has there been any thought given to including within the scope of it point of pollution enforcement, source enforcement, those sorts of things. So if the objective is to improve water quality and so on, if we can do enforcement against contaminants entering the stormwater system, for example, I authored a bill when I was in the legislature to require best management practices of plastics manufacturers handling nurdles. It's not being enforced, or at least it's not being enforced adequately. And some of that falls on our local water boards because the state water board is not doing it. So those are the sorts of things, plastic bag enforcement, the kinds of things that could really help improve the quality of the water. I just don't know if we can cram it within the scope of a recapture, capital investment oriented ballot measure. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, hi, Katie Young with Supervisor Kuehl's office. I think there are two places where we contemplate potential funding for that. The first is in the municipal program, where we provide a bunch of flexibility for cities if they want to spend some of their money on actually enforcing permittees. That's there, and that came out of a conversation we had with the regional board a couple months ago. And then the second place is through the crediting program. And the goal there is to really make sure that people are actually implementing and managing their BMPs and LID infrastructure so that it actually accomplishes the purposes for which it was built. Often we've heard people put LID on site and then don't maintain it. So as part of the credit rebate, you would have to provide an engineer's report that shows that your infrastructure is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. So in that way, we have sort of two ways, through the municipal flexibility and then through the credit rebate program.
Do you have something to add, Marty?
I was going to say, and maybe Adele can elaborate, we have two ways to comply. One is numerically comply, and the other is control the 85% storm. And so I'm not sure how well, if we control the numbers in this location, how that still gets us to the overall compliance, because the 85% storm, you can see the target and what we need to and measure the volumes. Numerically, it's going to be very challenging. So even if we clean up locations, I'm not sure if a handful of locations would be enough to get us where we have to numerically.
But as part of our permit, we have efforts, Shram kind of went through it without focusing a lot on it, is our inspection program and enforcement. We do monitoring and we do tracing of pollutants. If we see a increase, not a traditional urban runoff pollution, we will go and trace it and find, and we will have prosecuted people. We've gone through city attorney for prosecution, and that's already in place. And we need to do more of it. Always the restriction is how much resources you can invest there without, But the good news, I think, also something that we cannot forget is that Water and Power is working on a rebate to encourage industries to do the right thing to treat stormwater and capture it on site, because I think that will not only, it's not a stick only, it's actually a carrot. You're providing people an incentive to do the right thing. So I think it's a balance between enforcement and incentive. Between the two, I think we can do the right thing. But our enforcement staff is still are vigilant and looking for anybody who is polluting, and we respond to reports of people disposing of stuff. We recently responded to a leaking barrels down here by the 10 freeway and I think Broadway, where somebody just put in barrels of hydrochloric acid that was leaking. And we went through a whole investigation, and it's still going on right now, trying to find this is illegal, this is not right, and our ratepayers should not be paying for somebody's disposing of their stuff illegally, and it's going to harm the environment. So we take that seriously, and we continue doing that. We have a whole section of enforcement, and we can call the hotline number for sanitation, and 311 is critical for us to respond.
It's a further discussion we can have. I just thought we could, shoehorn it in here a little bit. Okay, go right ahead.
We do have to attack it from every angle, that's for sure.
All right, so for the taxpayers in the East Valley, I think we just need real answers on what it means for our lack of basic infrastructure in the area, our history with flooding, and of course addressing one of our biggest assets, which is the aquifer underneath. Having said that, I'm going to go ahead and read the following recommendation. Let's go ahead and, if we all agree, let's continue items 1 and 2 for 2 weeks and request that LA Sanitation and LADWP to provide additional comments on the unresolved matters pertaining to the draft program guidelines. I'd also like to hear a report back with more information on an action plan on how to address the concerns raised in this committee today regarding infrastructure safety and maximizing replenishment of the San Fernando Basin and the roles that all parties will play. And lastly, I would like to also have a more thorough analysis on the business credit program that we discussed, Adele. Okay. I also like to approve the BOS report on item number 3. Let's note and file items number 4 and 5. Are there any objections to that? Seeing none, that will be the order. Thank you very much. Our meeting is adjourned. I'll see you in 2 weeks.